Man, oh man, has Honda fucked up with this one, bro. I remember still like being in Walmart and picking up a car magazine for seeing the debut of the 10th gen Civic and immediately liking the car and not even really being. I've always been one of those guys that every car that comes out new has to grow on me a little bit before I appreciate it. So when the I didn't really like the body lines of the hatchback. So finding out the Type R was going to be based on that hatchback, I didn't really like it. The FK7, I hated it. So when the FK7 came out, we were told that we were going to get a Type R back in North America. Finally, and it was the first Civic Type R, and I was like, well, that's great, but that car looks like shit. So then when they came out with the FK8, the 10th gen, which is definitely a better uptick in looks than the FK7 was, I'm like, well, that's good, but it's still not really that great. And it's expensive. Wound up getting it anyway just because, Honda fam support, all this stuff. I figured being a Honda guy this long, I'd put back into it. But now, we go into the 11th gen Civic, and now when you tweak those a little bit with the body styling and stuff, they can look decent. But they didn't leave the biggest drawback from the 10th gen Civic has been the L15. Like, they're talking about one to feed into the aftermarket, like make this be a driver's car, but they know that the Civics and the Hondas are popular for modification, and the old school K series are like stomping the shit out of the shit that they're giving us now. Like, I like a year or two back, probably a little bit further back than that. I remember criticizing the Type R, the FK8. The K20C is not really that great. They're blowing up at 500 horsepower. And people are like, oh, that's just the fueling. And when people get the fueling shit dialed in, there becomes more support for it, then it won't be as big a problem. But still, we're seeing it's still taking built engines to make like 600 horsepower. And that's still crazy to me considering that stock K blocks from 30 or 20 something years ago are making like 700. Now, of course, they don't last forever on 700, but still, they'll last forever at 500. Lasting 600 horsepower for these fucking for these blocks, but to blow up at fucking at that low level or that high level, well, for the K20C, this is next level kind of. It's a huge step down from what we've already had, and so to think that maybe with the next generation of Honda coming out that we would get at least an upgrade in the engine platform, if maybe not the looks, just to find out that they're doubling down still with the L15 is a major disappointment. And they're talking about bringing out this Integra, saying this is going to be like the next step forward, and it's clearly inspired by by previous Integras when it's very clearly a fucking Civic with an Acura badge is, again, another huge disappointment. You look at the old school Integras as far back as they go and compare them to a Civic, they're night and day difference. And this fucking new Integra is clearly a fucking Civic with an Acura badge. It's fucking ugly. It's disgusting. And the entry level is going to be $30,000 with an L15. So you're pretty much buying a $30,000 Civic Si because it's going to be the same fucking engine. And even if they do, and it's the fucked up thing about the L15 situation with the Si is the last generation came out with 205 fucking horsepower, and now the new one's coming out with 200 for the next generation. So they detuned it a little bit, right? So maybe it was like a setup, like we'll turn down the power a little bit again on the SI. So that way when we release our fucking inflated priced Integra, that we'll just turn it up like another 25 horsepower and release it at 100 to 25. So that way we can say, hey, it's making more power. But like we already know the limitations of that block of 300 horsepower before it fucking explodes. So it's still useless. And is really 10, 15, even 20 horsepower enough to make that $7,000 jump in price? So of course, this is the initial unveiling. We're not going to get the entirety of the trims, the package levels yet. But at best case scenario, they come out with a Type S and they put a fucking the K20C in there. But the only thing I can say is maybe because this fucking car is hideous that we're not going to get a lot of dealer markup. Probably there's going to be initial dealer markup because there's going to be the initial fanboys that rush out to get this car. But I don't think it's going to sell very well. I think that we might see an early spike and then it's going to just fucking fall into the dumps because if the car is $30,000 MSRP for the baseline, then I would expect them to be selling 33 to 35 when they first come out. And if they do release a Type S with a K20C engine, then you're going to see 40,000 plus. You know, there's no way that it's going to be only a little bit of a markup when it's the Acura badge and the Civic Type R's, even used, are selling at a, you know, if you're lucky finding them at 38,000 and they average over 40. So it's kind of hard for me to see that they're going to release a premium version of this car that's not going to sell under 40,000, or that's going to sell under 40,000. You know, and then you got cars like the Z coming out, which is going to be 40,000 at entry and 400 fucking horsepower, and the Supra that's around, you know, that's around just 50,000 that's making the same thing, and both cars look fucking, you know, way fucking better. I just, it's crazy because, you know, you think they take advantage of the Integra badge with how well the Type R is doing, and then they just miss the mark so much, you know. And it just sucks because what's going to happen is this car's going to wind up tanking, they're going to wind up losing money, and then they're going to use that as an excuse to not give us good shit later.